Well, hey folks, this is Dr. Duncan with part 2 of our Unit 5 presentation on climate and biomes, and this is for our course BI 101. Now, all of this leads to the different precipitation zones that we have on the planet. There are 3 zones that get a lot of rain and 4 zones that are relatively dry. And the way this works is we're going to go across this cartoon. We're going to start at the equator and follow packets of air as they move around. Before we do that, realize, of course, that this is a idealized version of climate patterns, and it's never quite so tidy as depicted in this cartoon. So let's start at the equator. The equator is very, very warm, and every day when that sun comes up and starts irradiating the surface, it heats up water evaporates, rises up through the lower atmosphere, and gradually cools as it rises. So much water is evaporated from the equatorial zones that as that water cools at higher elevations, it condenses out into clouds and then into rain, and then you get a lot of rain. So this is why the world's tropical rainforests are distributed along the equator. Out in the oceans, those zones along the equator get a lot of rain as well. Now, that air that had been rising from the surface around the equator, it continues to rise after it loses so much of its moisture. And that air doesn't keep going away from the Earth's surface. If it did, we would lose our atmosphere, and instead it winds up traveling either to the north or the south. Now at this point, this air is very cool and it's dry. And do you remember what happens to air that's cold? Well, yeah, it likes to sink. And so this air gradually starts making a descent, going into lower and lower altitudes. And in general, it tends to fall out at around 30 degrees north of the equator and about 30 degrees south of the equator. This air is very dry, and consequently, that's where we have the world's major deserts at those 2 latitudes. Now, some of this air, as it reaches the Earth's surface again, some of it will travel southward towards the equator and pick up moisture and heat as it goes and become part of that equatorial loop once again. Some of it will travel northward, away from 30 degrees north, and it will also pick up some heat, and it will also pick up water vapor, and it will eventually, when it gets around 60 degrees north, it will converge with air descending from the poles, and that warm air will rise up again, and you get the same process of rainfall around 60 degrees north and 60 degrees south. And that air, of course, can then travel northwards towards the pole as very cold, dry air, or southwards back towards 30 degrees north, depending on the time of the year and the local influences of the jet stream and other high altitude winds. So air is circulating across the planet like in these different cells all year long, and that is what distributes a lot of the moisture around the planet, leading to these 3 different precipitation zones. Okay, I'm going to end the first part of this unit's video right now, and we'll start number 2 on a separate film.